you ever had that moment of an overwhelming feeling of fear? Or do you actually lay awake all night, worrying about different things and not getting enough sleep? Well, most of us do actually suffer with anxiety and stress. Even I do. I had it quite a lot in my past when I was younger. I dealt with panic attacks. And then there's just been general times in my life where things have just been too much and felt a bit too stressful. Because stress is any demand placed on the brain, on the brain or the physical body. The feeling of being stressed can be triggered by any event that makes us feel frustrated or nervous. Anxiety, though, is the feeling of fear, worry and unease. Anxiety can be triggered by stress. But not all anxiety and stress is bad for us, especially in the short term. It can actually help us overcome challenges and difficult situations. For example, of everyday stresses and anxieties can include worrying about finding that job or being nervous about the big test. We can be embarrassed about social situations. But these actually just motivate us to deal with it, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't actually have the motivation to study for the big test. Or we wouldn't, worry about finding the job. We'd just be sitting on the sofa thinking, it doesn't really matter. We need that little push. But it's when it becomes a bigger thing that there's a problem. Did you actually know that anxiety affects over 8 million people in the UK? This is around 1 in 6 adults that suffer with it. It is the most common group of mental health illness in the country. However, only 36.9% of people actually receive treatment. There are several different types of anxiety and stress. Each with distinguished symptoms. However, the most common ones can include dizziness, sweating, trembling, increased or irregular heartbeat. We can get back pain, restlessness and fatigue. We can have muscle tension. We can be easily startled. And incurring and ongoing worries with or without known stresses. We can even avoid situations that may cause us worry or often affect our quality of life. But long-term stress and anxiety may also have some of the above symptoms, but there is also, when it comes on for a lot longer, you can have that constant nagging sense of fear. You can easily get very irritable. We can have more trouble sleeping. We can develop headaches. We can have trouble getting on with our work and planning for the future. And we might even have problems with our sex and losing our self-confidence. Because anxiety and worry is actually us creating a narrative in our mind of what will happen. So what we're doing, we're thinking what's going to happen in the future, and we're creating this in our head. So then when we go into that narrative and that thinking, our emotions kick in, feeling I can't handle that, and the fear, abandonment and all those things start to come in. And then because we have all these emotions kicking around, that just reinforces the thinking and the narrative. So we're going round in circles. But if we start to understand what anxiety and low moods are, we can start to work with it instead of working against it. There are 4 ways that it can affect us, and it can be thoughts, emotions, physical symptoms, and behaviour. So the thoughts are our unrealistic and negative thinking. Our emotions are the feelings that we feel. Our physical symptoms are how it comes out in the body. And then our behaviour is how we react to a situation. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just pause the video in a minute when the sign comes up, and I want you to look at the list in your download, and I want you to just go through and tick off anything that you feel affects you. So under all those sections is a list of things. Tick them off and just see how it's affecting you. So how did you get on with that section? The reason for doing this is for us to actually stop and take some time and have a look at how these symptoms are affecting us. Because we have them, but we don't always realise where they're coming from. It's just become part of life. So why do we get these symptoms? Well, that actually is fight or flight. A lot of you have probably already heard about it. But without the fight or flight system, we probably do nothing. We'll be unable to fear that tiger. We won't know that we need to run away. And even if we did, we'd have nothing to help us. It's like getting into a fight, but not having the strength or a quick response to react for it. What happens with the fight or flight? The response floods the body with changes in the hormones, the neurotransmitters, and it prepares the body so you can immediately run away or fight. It's designed to cover all bases. It improves blood flow to the areas that is needed. It keeps the body cool so we can cope. But it provides you with more energy to be able to run. And it helps you respond quickly by improving our mind. The fight or flight system is actually one of the most important tools our body has. Even though these days people very rarely face that many dangers like the tiger. But what we do face in today's world is just general stress. And this kicks off the fight or flight system as well. The only difference is that we don't actually come down from the cortisol high that you're meant to from fight or flight. As you can see from the diagram, when the fight and flight happens, the cortisol level in the blood is pumped around and it goes to the brain. We are all meant to come down from that cortisol high after we've reacted. So we fight or fly and then calm down. You can see the arch going up and the body pumping the cortisol around and then cooling down. But with long-term stress, we have in the world today, due to our busy lives, etc., we don't get that chance to cool down and calm down. We're on the go and the more and more is still happening. So as you can see in the next diagram, that we go up through stresses that happen in our life. And so you had a stress at work and everything, and you're on that, and you might calm down a bit, But then something else comes in at work and someone else is telling you something, or the kids come and tell you something and it's all going on, and we don't quite drop too much. Then we get in the car and something else happens and daily life is going and we're running from one to the other. So we don't actually calm the body at all. We've just kept going. And the more we keep going, the more the body's staying like that. We've not actually realised anymore that we're running on a higher level. But when this keeps happening to the body, it starts sending hormones and chemicals to the brain. And it's telling the brain that this is just normal life. This is why so many of us don't even realise we're stressed. But while all this is happening, the rest of the body is working in overload. Our adrenals, our spleen and our kidneys. And the body can't run like this for long periods without depleting. Because what actually happens is where the chemicals and the blood and the glucans and that is going around the body to help the brain more and the muscles to be strong, all the kidneys, liver, spleen, digestive system goes into slow and shutdown. When that goes into shutdown, because it's not needed. It's not the most necessary thing in stress or in the fight or flight system. So if we're running like that all the time, our organs and livers and spleen are constantly struggling. And then, especially with nowadays, if we don't eat properly because we're stressed or busy, the body's having to then cope with all the preservatives we're throwing in, but it's not on top form, those organs. So then this is why so many of us are becoming ill, run down, and our immune system is dropping through stress. We hear it all the time when we speak to the doctors. One of the first thing they say is, "Are you stressed?" But stress is actually wanting the present moment to be something it's not. When we've got our head round that, things aren't always so stressful. So then when we don't feel stress, we don't need to be in the fight or flight system. But so how does fight or flight then become anxiety if it's coming from stress? So as you can see in the next diagram, stress equals fight or flight. Long-term stress equals fight or flight malfunction with a high cortisol level. So fight or flight malfunction with the high cortisol level equals a chemical being sent to the brain thinking this is normal. And so long term of the chemical going to the brain, thinking, oh, this is okay, it then equals a cloudy brain, which is really toxin. In the next diagram, you will see that if the body suffers from anxiety and stress for a long period of time, the brain gets cloudy. As I said earlier, hormones and chemicals are sent to the brain, but this is toxic, and the brain is unable to think and see clearly. You are unable to think straight, make the right decision, or feel overwhelmed. But actually what's happening is you don't realise you're unable to think straight because the brain is cloudy. The cortisol in the brain is released and it acts like a shield. It's cutting off your frontal lobe, which is our thinking part of the brain. So you've got the chemical going, cloudy brain, unable to think straight, unable to make a right decision, and then you feel overwhelmed. And because you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, the chemical kicks in, so the cycle goes round and round. But all that time we are unaware that we're not thinking straight and the brain is cloudy. Now this is when anxiety will kick in and the cycle begins. This is the end of the theory part in module 1, And now it's time to move on to the practical part and learn some tools for your toolkit. But before I do that, we're going to do a quick recap on what we've learned so far. So in this module, we've learnt what is anxiety and stress, what are the symptoms we have from anxiety and stress, the 4 ways it can affect us: thoughts, emotions, physical symptoms, and behaviours. We've also learnt about fight or flight and how it affects the body. And how does fight or flight become anxiety? And the last thing we learned was why we get cloudy brains and unable to think clearly. So now it is time to work through the toolkit for Module 1, and I will see you in Module 2.